The story my dad gave to me was around the time I got my permit to start driving. And the reason he told me it was uh, kind of like a coming of age, scared straight attempt at making sure I followed the law. Um, the story was about him when he first got his permit and got into some trouble almost. It starts off with him first getting his permit, going over to his friend's house, and his friend convinced their dad that my dad had gotten his license instead of just his permit. So they go out with the new car that his friend's dad just got. They're driving by themselves and end up going to the playground where they're not supposed to and end up seeing some older kids there. One of them, who's known to be, my dad explained it as a gangbanger, but a not so stand-up member of society, walked over to the car, got them out, and got into the driver's seat. My dad and his friend got in the back, and were at the mercy of this man they hardly knew driving around the city of Harrisburg. So he drives for about 20 to 30 minutes, ends up going to this project area where he gets in an altercation with another gang. They're yelling at each other. Some slurs get tossed back and forth, and he peels off in a very dramatic fashion. My dad looks back through the rearview window and sees two muzzle flashes go off as the guy enters the street and fires at the car. He doesn't hear anything, and then the glass shatters and he hears a hard hit in the back of the trunk. They duck back down. They're screaming in the back. The guy in the front keeps driving and goes right back to the playground where he got the car in the first place. He gets out, apologizes for the accident, tells my dad's friend to bill him for the accident to the car, and walks off past the playground. My dad and his friend, not knowing what to do, drive to the mall and come up with this convoluted plan of they were at the mall watching a movie, and when they came back out, the car was stolen. They pushed the car into the woods, and that was the last that they ever saw of it. They walked back home and told their parents what happened.
Now, have you ever been interested in trying to find that car?
No.
No? Okay.
No. Me personally, no.
So with your dad, what's the point of telling you that story? And certainly, like, and we'll get into this, but the idea of, like, picking stories, my dad does this too. Like, he can tell me stories before his cop days, but
Mhm.
the cop stories are a little bit trickier.
Mhm.
So was that story, you think, effective on you?
I feel like it was, only because I've gotten a collection of stories over time that have built upon it. And I know the reason he was telling me that story was to say along the lines of, as smart as you think you might be, I've been through and done anything that you can think of, so don't try it. It was kind of that cautionary, like, you might think you're better, but I'm there. I'm one step ahead.
So then if we started to, like, pull out traits of what it is to be the son of a cop, or the child of a police officer, what do you think it is that kind of, like, sets us in this world that we're in?
I feel like just being aware is something that a lot of my peers don't have, but I do. Whether it's driving, like noticing if cars are following you, or defensive driving, or if it's being in a location and noticing someone might have a gun just by how they're walking or how they're positioning their body in the room. It's strange things that no one else would know unless they've had some sort of training. And that's what I consider it, is that I'm sure you feel the same way, is that we've been trained by a police officer to be ready.
I want to kind of come back to this idea of, like, who you are as a person now. So we have, what is your major?
Communication studies.
And you're interested in?
Acting.
Okay. Not usually something that goes hand in hand.
No, not at all.
Police officer, and certainly studying movies and studying art and music were not high on my dad's list of things. What is your dad's reaction to that?
When I first told him, there definitely was that shock. I had played football my entire life. I had played every sport, really. I had just played sports my entire life. When I got to high school, I started doing the lights and sound for musicals, and one of the kids dropped out of the show. Since I had been going to every single rehearsal, I memorized every line that every character had, and I volunteered to take his place. And that was my first show, and I fell in love with it ever since then. And like that initial thing of like, hey Dad, I don't want to play football this year, I want to act, definitely hit him pretty hard. Like he didn't know how to respond to it. I think there was a fear of like not being able to connect, I guess, because like that was our connection point, was sports. So there was that fear of losing that connection we had, I guess. There's this flip of a coin whether or not we will come out the way we do. Either it is that we're scared straight, or we're the hoodlums and the class clowns and the quote unquote bad ones.
Even if there's things that you think were way too intense, do you think that this stuff will carry over into your adulthood?
Yeah. I feel like it's too deeply ingrained in me to not have it happen. I go through the weirdest scenarios in my head, like things that odds are will never happen, but I can't escape the thought of like the worst case scenario. How would I overcome it? That's always going through my head. If I feel uncomfortable in a situation, I will go through a scenario where I can get out okay. It's part of who I am now, and I don't think it'll change.